Welcome to the INFOWARS Nightly News. I'm your host, Jakari Jackson. Here's what we have in store for you on this August 21st, 2013 edition.
Tonight on the INFOWARS Nightly News, whistleblower Bradley Manning sentenced to 35 years for unleashing the transparency we were all promised. Plus, a Japanese brainwashing campaign boldly declares that radiation doesn't affect you when you are smiling. Then, Sergeant Joe Biggs on the militarization of the police in America. All that and more on the INFOWARS Nightly News.
And welcome back. Top story headline: sentenced to 35 years. Bradley Manning faces longest ever prison term for leak. Manning was convicted last month of 19 charges related to his document disclosures, including 12 Espionage Act and theft charges, as well as others including wrongfully storing classified information and misusing computer equipment. Manning may be able to seek parole after serving a third of his sentence and has already spent 3 years in jail. WikiLeaks pointed out that he may be eligible for release in less than 9 years. Even so, Manning's sentence is far longer than any other in Espionage Act history in terms of the U.S. So Private First Class Bradley Manning, who I think is an American hero, he releases these documents, this information, and it's all about Manning. It's all about what he did and, the information he released. It's not about any repercussions for anybody else who was actually doing these things, for the soldiers who are shooting at children from helicopters and so on and so forth. Many other things have been released in those documents, but no, it's all about him, just like it's all about Edward Snowden and what he did. It's not about the people who are actually doing these things behind the scenes. And as far as I'm concerned, 3 years is more than enough for Mr. Manning, and I do wish him a very speedy release. I mean speedy as in tomorrow, or if not today. But it's one thing to be sentenced to pretty much life in prison, 35 years, especially as a young man. He's going to be eating all the GMO crappy food and being beat up in prison and so forth. But that's one thing, but it's also another thing to have your car just blow up when you're driving down the street and then have a coroner's report come out and say you have meth, you have this, you have that in your bloodstream, exaggerated reports about your drug habits and so forth. Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs was on the Alex Jones radio show to discuss this very issue.
Staff Sergeant Biggs, thanks for popping in with us. There's a lot of facets to this that smell. What's your take on it?
Yeah, just a lot of these things that keep showing up in the toxicology report. I mean, if it had no effect on the accident, why are they naming? They're just like running off and naming all this different stuff, but then they go and say, well, there's nothing wrong. They're saying that he was on mushrooms apparently, because that's what DMT is. It's like a psilocybin. There's just all kinds of random stuff. And the methamphetamine, I mean, he was known to be on Ritalin, so I don't know if that's a contributing factor to something that showed positive in the test.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. They've put hundreds of millions of people worldwide on these drugs, and now, that's right, he was a Ritalin from childhood, and then the people get basically used to it to operate, and then now that's like an excuse for why his car blew up. It's just very strange.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking over the police report right now, and it's saying that, because of, striking the tree, and it was instantaneous death. I mean, if you look at the tree, you can tell this doesn't add up.
Well, what about them saying that he was charred beyond recognition, so they had to cremate him, but now the autopsy says they got fingerprints and that wasn't true?
Yeah, I know. It's just crazy.
Well, I mean, stories are always going to change and things, but, I mean, the fact is, if I ever say, I'm going off the radar, they're coming after me, boom, I mean, obviously something smells here. And the fact that they ridicule anybody that questions, I think that's a big red flag right there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people out there that are questioning everybody who's questioning the whole incident itself. A lot of the people I know that have the same viewpoints as I do about what happened, they're all being ridiculed, and everyone just wants to throw that conspiracy tag on there when there's just so many questions that aren't answered and so many things don't add up. I mean, you've got to be mental to not think that there's something more than just an accident.
Now stay tuned, because after this news segment, Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs is going to be our guest on the INFOWARS Nightly News, talking about the militarization of America. But let's move on. NSA has ability to illegally spy on 75% of all internet traffic. I'm surprised it's such a small amount, 75%, writes Mike Masnick for TechDirt, replete with NSA doublespeak. It claims that it is not accessing all this traffic because it asks the telcos, that's the telecom companies, to do some of the filtering for it. That's how it gets away with talking about things we actually touch. Even though it deals with the telcos basically mean they can access almost everything. The Wall Street Journal reports that the government considers its vast array of surveillance programs as legal under a broad interpretation of the FISA Amendment Act, an act obviously at odds with the Fourth Amendment. So they're playing these word games. No, we don't spy on you. We hire the person who actually spies on you. That's like if you hire some peeping Tom to go spy in somebody's window with a video camera when the guy gets caught. Well, I was working for them, and then the big boss says, well, I didn't technically do it. I hired this guy to go do it. So that's what the telecom companies and the NSA are involved with. And like I said, it's a 75% number, which to me was a small number. I thought they could spy on all internet traffic, and I wouldn't be surprised to find out if that was actually the case. Now, dubious chemical weapon attack in Syria coincides with UN visit, which to me, you can see the video and the images right there. If you were going to have chemical weapons or any type of weapons, let's say you're an ex-con here in the United States, and you know you're not supposed to have guns in your house, and you know the cops are coming by for their visit or their checkup or whatever, and you have a big gun rack in your house with loaded weapons. And not only do you have the loaded weapons, the officer walks inside and you start shooting off your guns inside your house knowing that you're an ex-con. That's pretty much the situation they're trying to blame on the Assad regime in Syria. And once again, I'm not cheerleading for Assad. You know, the Syrian rebels aren't much better in my opinion, but I'm not cheerleading for Assad. But this is the situation we see in Syria. You know, Obama wants this red line, this step over the line so he can go in and put visible troops, visible boots on the ground to go in and control Syria. So he's saying, no, if they have these chemical weapons, if they have these chemical agents, we're going to bust in there. And I think that's what the situation is that we're seeing right here. Just another frame up, just like we saw months ago when they had the chemical attack and both sides are pointing at each other like this. We didn't do it. That guy did it. And we see another one right here. And I don't put anything past the Syrian rebels. You know, they have kids playing with dynamite. They're ripping out people's hearts and so forth. So another dirty trick, in my opinion, from the Syrian rebels. Now we have this brainwashing campaign. Radiation doesn't affect people who are smiling. If you are smiling, you will not have any radiation effect. This is what they're trying to convince you of. If you are not smiling, you will have radiation effect. And they prove this theory by testing it on animals. And the guy asked, what's the difference between safe and feeling safe? And he says, safe can be recognized by anyone. Feeling or recognition of safe, meaning of the feeling of safe, is really narrow, but safe is safe for everyone. And if you're like me, you're like, how does that possibly make sense, even if you did test it on somebody's dog, which I think is pretty horrific, and Peter needs to go over there and yell at some people. But if you feel safe, you are safe. So this next article has nothing to do with anything. West coast of North America to be hit hard by Fukushima radiation. So if you feel safe, then you have nothing to worry about because you are safe. And the fact that, you know, these diagrams and these graphs, they just don't mean anything. Yeah, you can see it right there on your screen, and we'll scroll down and show you some more of these graphs. You know, you can see the patterns there of the radiation moving in towards various areas. But if you feel safe, you are safe. And we have proven this by testing this theory on animals. San Diego Craigslist ads searches for surveillance role players. And, you know, these are the crisis actors and so forth that you hear so much about. San Diego Craigslist ads searches for surveillance role players. Qualified personnel should demonstrate an established track record of conducting surveillance operations at various discretion levels, supporting surveillance training and military practice exercise training. Individuals with previous military, intelligence, community, and law enforcement experience are highly preferred. And you can see the article as it is itself right there on your screen. According to the company's website, their mission is to effectively address and solve our clients' emerging and most complex leadership, organizational, and operational challenges. And this is from the Massey Group. Now, we're just going to show you just a few of the examples here of the agencies that have use these resources of the Massey Group. We have the Army National Guard, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Department of Defense. And keep in mind, it wasn't all that long ago. This isn't the drill itself, but San Diego had a drill similar to this where they had a zombie invasion. This is real news. You can go look it up. This happened, I believe it was last year. They had a mock zombie invasion full of, like what you see right there, crisis actors. Now, I do Again, stress this isn't the drill itself, but it was somewhat similar. A zombie attack happened, a zombie invasion, and they have to go rush in and save the vice president or whatever the thing was. And these are the crisis actors you hear about. Now, I'm not saying that every time you see somebody crying on TV during a tornado or during a school shooting or whatever, I'm not saying that every single one of those people are crisis actors. Don't take that out of context. I'm just saying that crisis actors do exist, and this is a perfect example of that. So let's end now with our quote of the day. This is from Jim Morrison. We fear violence less than our own feelings. Personal, private, solitary pain is more terrifying than what anyone else can inflict. That by Mr. Jim Morrison. So stay tuned, because as I alluded to earlier, right after this break, we'll have Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs right here in the studio, and he's going to be talking to Leanne McAdoo about the militarization of America.
Now you can watch the INFOWARS Nightly News streaming live as it happens for free.
Check it out at INFOWARS.com/show.